I can tell them where I am. Hello, everybody. This is Jeanne-Marie Paynel here with you for the Montessori show for January 2018 Montessori show. And I am speaking to you from somewhere near Los Angeles. I just drove 3 hours and I'm not quite sure where I am, but I am in a Montessori school where I will be speaking later today. And I thought I wanted to do both. So I drove up earlier to be here with Simone. Hello, Simone.
Hello, I'm Simone Davies and I'm from the Montessori Notebook and I am based in Amsterdam. So I love connecting with Jeanne-Marie about once a month. We get online to answer all your questions. And we've had a great response to this month's question, which was, what are you struggling with at the moment trying to implement Montessori at home? And it tends to be quite a popular question. So great. And also there's already some people who have jumped on the chat box. If you're on a computer, you can answer your questions there. I'm just going to pop out the chat so I can see what's going on.
Yes, and do let us know where you're calling in from, because we get so thrilled how international this Montessori village is, and people who have been following the show is just from all corners of the world. So
yeah, so we have May here from the Philippines.
Say hello. Yes. We have
it's her first time on the show, and Amy says, hi, looking forward to the show. What is today's topic? Indeed, what are you struggling with at Montessori at home? I'm just going to type that into the chat box. And
yes.
Oh, Morven's also
joining Scotland. In Scotland. Hello, Morven. So I will start with some of these questions that did come in through email, and just know if you sign up to get notified through email that when the next show is going, you can always use that to, ask your questions about that month's topic, and then we have a chance to look at them beforehand and all that. So wonderful.
Oh, before we start, we've got more. It says, Michelle says, oh, I'm so happy to see you both. I've watched so many videos this past week and she's new to Montessori. And Sabia's joining from the UK. She's a regular as well. Hi, Devon from Ohio. Welcome, Devon. And Asnat from Estonia. I hope I didn't miss much. No, we're just starting right now. And Michelle says she's becoming a teacher, looking at a teacher. And Caroline's online from Estonia. Caroline, is that the same Caroline I met this week? So we had a visitor from Estonia this week. I think it is. Same spelling anyway. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Let's get started.
So yes, wonderful. So the first question, and I will ask Simone about this one. We're just going to take turns reading the questions and answering them. So this comes from Dara, and Dara has an 18-month-old, and she was she talks a little bit about her setup, shelves with different heights and lots of books and everything. But she is wondering, we end up with half of the shelf's content on the floor. And so her question is, how do I encourage him to play / concentrate longer? And secondly, when do I step in to clean up and put things back? So how do you deal with that with an 18-month-old? Or what would be your advice, Simone, for an 18-month-old at home?
So I think they've already got a good start because they've got open shelves, not a toy box where the kids are just pulling everything out. I'd kind of look at how many things they have available, because maybe there are too many things so that when they pull it out, they lose concentration. So I'd really try and limit maybe the number of toys and see if you can see, okay, if I have 6 toys, is that enough? Or 10 toys, that seems to be too many, and kind of keep tweaking it until you found a good number. And then at 18 months, I'd still mostly be doing modeling with them, showing them how things get packed away when they're finished and that they go back. Because sometimes they just move from one thing to the next and they're just learning. Like, for example, in my toddler class, I guess a lot of the younger children around 18 months are still working at the shelf. And then as they build concentration, they get a little bit longer in the work cycle, they'll start to take that to a table. And then the older children, again, will then start to bring it back. So and actually that depends on the day. Sometimes they do it all and some days not at all. But when we keep showing them and you're also doing it at home, I find that it happens very naturally, and just to relax about it, I think. So.
Yes, and very good point, because I remember understanding, like in the training, that the toddlers do tend to work at the shelf or right there in front of it, and that it is actually when they take work from the shelf, take it to a table, work, put it back, when we observe that, that's usually time for them to move to the primary classroom. So there's, like Simone says, it takes time and patience and relax and enjoy, but
and then to actually when to step in to help them clean up or tidy up.
Right.
So if they've moved on, but they haven't quite started engaging in the next activity, I could say, oh, let's put this back on the shelf. It goes here, and just tap the shelf. But if they've already started concentrating on the next activity, then I don't tend to break their concentration by calling them away. So I would just model, and just out of the corner of their eye, they might notice it. Or if you're in a playgroup environment, another child might see it. So you're basically laying the foundation, but you're not also interrupting the new concentration. And then as they get a bit older, something that I try to do when they're kind of starting to bring an activity away from the shelf, and then they go over to the shelf and they get something else, I say, oh, I'll hold that one for you while you put this one back. And just so they know, particularly if there's another sibling or something, it's quite safe. And then that can also help when to step in, if that makes sense.
Yes, and you bring up a good point, is that whole point of observation that I know we've done a whole show on observation, and that's when you see when their concentration is, when they come out of their flow. At that point you can go in and say, oh, let's put this back or whatever. So great. So the same person had a question about the communication. The other thing that is just developing is crying, whining if he wants something and he wants it straight away. If I give in every time, I feel like he's learning that whining, crying gets him what he wants. So any advice there on how to communicate that patience that they need to learn?
Yeah. So when they're crying or they're whining, they're trying to communicate something. And so I'm trying my best to be their translator and just say, what is it that you're trying to tell me? And they can't necessarily say that. So I make guesses like, oh, are you trying to show me that you want this? You could say, Ella. And so I model what I'd like them to say, and I'm translating for them all the time so that they eventually won't have to cry or whine. They'll be able to actually just use the words. The other thing is actually when I read the question, she actually is doing what I would do. She's getting down to his level. She's acknowledging his feeling. And the bit that I think is maybe missing is she wants it to stop. But actually, maybe he just needs to whine and cry. So I would just sit with him. Yeah, you're really finding it hard. And I'm okay with you finding it really hard. But I'm not going to give in, but I will just be there to support you. Sometimes I also say, come show me, particularly around 18 months, they may not be so verbal. So it's a balance between translating and just also acknowledging and sitting with them, and not hoping that when we acknowledge their feelings, that means it's going to go away, but actually just sitting them and letting them work through. And that you're basically their safe person. I even say that when my teenagers come to me and have a good moan, I actually feel very honored that they trust me so much that they can, let all their ugly feelings out.
Yes.
I'm their safe person.
Yeah, no. So just that, and I love how you say a translator, because it's true. At this time, they know what they want. They just don't know how to express it. And if that's his way of, expressing his frustration or his impatience and such, you're giving words to the emotions, and it does sound like you're, doing a great job. And sometimes it's, even when we feel upset, when somebody tells you, oh, don't feel upset, that probably makes us more upset. So it's just, that acknowledging it and being okay with it. So yeah, wonderful.
I'm just going to jump over to the chat box and see if anyone's added anything, except I've lost my pop out. Here it is. Oh, we've got lots more people on the call.
Barcelona and Romania. Wonderful. Hello, everybody.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the next question, Miss Jeanne-Marie.
Okay.
The next one is also, this is from Ines, and her boy is 18 months old. And she is struggling a bit with Montessori because we base everything in reality for the young children. So she had a couple of questions. One was about books and why a lot of her favorite books by Jeffers and things like this have animals that talk and other creatures in them, for example, that talk. And she believes that fables and fairy tales are part of cultural heritage, encouraging fantasy, empathy, and creative thinking. So why ban them? And then similarly, like with open-ended toys, why do we limit that? But should we do the first one first? We'll do books.
I'll do the first one. And this is it's a great question, because this comes up a lot with this notion that the first 6 years is just a time when they are absorbing the concrete reality that they have been born into, and they want to understand and they want to figure things out and such. So we're not saying to ban fantasies and such, but to give it a little bit of time, to give them the foundation first of what is reality. Because before 6, they tend to not be able to intellectually make the difference between what is real and what is made up. So let's give them the proper information from the start, so that they have a good base, and then they can develop their own imagination and create wonderful stories. And then later on, we can also introduce the culture and the fantasies of the fables of the culture and such. And I remember actually in the classroom where the child starts kind of leaning towards understanding what is real and not real. And they would actually say, when I would read a book that was a little bit different, they would say, "Oh, but that's not real. That's pretend." And so we want to wait until really they can make that difference. And to me, it's just really about respecting the idea that they are just learning about this new environment that they are in, and it is a way of honoring their intellect by giving them really the concrete and real and reality. So that's really how I understand it. Simone, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and also I think that it's not that you have to ban it. I don't like that word so much. It's kind of like, it's just that we're really trying to feed what will, what they're showing interest in and what they'll understand the most. Because it's not like that they won't later. There's some beautiful writings about if you actually base the child in reality in the first 6 years, it actually enables them to have an amazing imagination later. And imagination is different to fantasy, because fantasy is fantastical. It doesn't exist in reality. And imagination might be like creativity of how you'll solve problems of world pollution and, get along with your neighbors and these kind of things. So I think, you can definitely be more flexible with these kind of things. But as Jeanne-Marie says, in the first 6 years, as much as possible, we stay in reality. And then occasionally when you have a really good book you like, or just, oh, does a bear really drive a car? No. So please don't think that we're trying to be very, strict about this. But at the same time, just understand that if you have a scary thing happen in a book, they're really going to take that as real. And
Yes.
Absolutely. So the second part of the question then is about open-ended toys. I'm concerned that by not giving children room to make up worlds, use their imagination, for example, talk to their stuffed or wooden animals, I'm taking away their childhood, part of healthy development, and does it not foster creativity, empathy on many other skills? Are we not trying to make them into little adults, like for building blocks or wooden open-ended toys such as the Grimm's rainbows and those kind of things?
So I mean, yeah, it's a great one. And I think there might be a little confusion there, because I actually encourage open-ended toys. What I would discourage is toys that already have a script, meaning, characters from movies that you're going to see where the script is already there. I would much prefer a child to play with blocks and pretend. And we are not in any way saying, you can't pretend. Children will have the most amazing imagination and will pretend all sorts of things. It's just So we let that happen. What we maybe try to encourage more, again, is just activities based in real life, in reality. I would much prefer a child to come into the kitchen and start experiencing and having the sensorial experiences with the real food than with pretend food, than with, learning what different fruits and vegetables are with plastic ones or wooden ones or felt ones, because again, that's not reality. I would rather that they have the real thing in their hands so that they have all of those sensorial experiences of the different textures and the different smell and the taste and such. So I think there might be a little confusion if I understood the question right. I mean, we do not ban open-ended toys and do not, say, no, you can't pretend, because that would not be following the child. But we do give, realistic and as delicate and as beautiful objects for them to work with.
I think I see that these open-ended toys that Reggio Emilia, this kind of sensorial play with the loose objects, is not Montessori, in that a lot of the Montessori activities have a beginning, middle, and end to the activities that they have. And I think that at home, having open-ended toys, having some of the actual activities is also nice, because it's really satisfying when a child finishes a puzzle, having open-ended play. I think that a toddler would miss that challenge of sometimes really mastering a skill, something that's a little bit more difficult. So I think it's nice to balance both. Yeah.
I remember you had asked a question in one of our Montessori groups about that, of these kind of open-ended activities. Do you remember that when we were in Prague? There had been a presentation about the assistance at infancy.
Yeah, that was Judy's response. She says that the toddler loves to master activities, and yet particularly with babies, for example, more open-ended exploration makes sense, but she wouldn't only have open-ended exploration for toddlers because they really need to master things. So that was, in summary, a page-and-a-half article.
Right, yes.
Yeah, I found that very useful. Actually, Related May in the group says, how do you handle the Easter Bunny and Santa? Made up things, and there's really a lot of differences. I think we might have spoken about this before, and you have to choose what you feel most comfortable with. Some people say, I'm not going to lie to my child, so I'm not going to do it, and other people and then as the child gets old enough to understand, they say, this is a tradition that we're passing on, and we're going to use it as a special, ritual that we've always done, and, because it's a fun thing, not that they're trying to lie to them. But they are made up, and some people don't feel comfortable with that, and yeah, they say, I am Santa and I am your mum, something like this.
And we did do a show, specifically around kind of the holiday tradition, and that came up a lot. And to me, it's really your opportunity to create a tradition, that you don't have to go along with the mass media. If the Easter Bunny, like I've never ever talked about an Easter Bunny, but in my home, just because that's never been part of my tradition or culture. And so, it's really up to you and I think honesty is the best practice. So yeah, very good.
And then there's one last question for this person. It's about in Montessori that they can start with maths and other things from 3 years on. And she's worried that brain research shows that early reading and maths, as well as flashcards and categorizing, are not good for brain development, and they should be delayed. So
this is,
I think that,
this is another very good point. The Montessori classroom and the activities that are there are never forced onto the child. This is really about following the child. And I have seen, and I have been in the presence of 2.5-year-old children who come into the primary classroom, or 3-year-olds that come into the primary classroom and are fascinated with the symbols of our written language. And we give them the opportunity to discover them through their tactile sense, because we know that they're very sensitive to touch, and that's why we have sandpaper letters, and we just give them the information that they are seeking. And so to me, it's I don't know the brain research that is being mentioned here about that it's not good or such. I think the idea of flashcards, of trying to get them to memorize things, probably isn't the best approach. But in the Montessori, we're just creating an environment for them, and we follow them. So if they are interested, I'm not going to say, oh, wait a minute, you're too young, this isn't good for you. If they're interested, then let's go for it. And then some will be a little later. So it's really about following what their desires are, and they're amazing. And these are sensitive periods that we need to follow and respect. So if the child is wanting to know numbers and letters and everything, I think it's important to follow their lead.
Yeah.
Right? Wouldn't you agree?
Definitely. And I think that I think there's also we're not actually teaching a child, we're following them where they're at. So it's not the adult saying, now you're ready to learn the letters. They're in the classroom from 3 years old, because as Jeanne-Marie says, some younger children are very interested in it. 2-year-old who's not showing interest, they're never forced to learn. So it's very much for every child. So I hope that clears that up, Ines, and makes it easier to understand. Perfect. So,
yes, good. So the next question is for you, Simone, and a 17-month-old. So we have a lot of that age range today, toddlers. They know you've just come out with the Montessori toddler book. Does everybody know this? This is amazing. Simone is a published author. She has, and I've seen it, and on social media this morning as I left home, I saw that some people had received the book and I haven't yet. So when I get home tomorrow, it will be there. I know it, and I can't wait to see it. But anyways, so my question this month relates to Montessori toileting. We have a 17-month-old boy. We started raising toilet awareness. So about this time, putting him in training pants, offering potty, but he is resisting and starts crying as soon as, hold on here, I can't see the whole question. As soon, and he gets close to it. Part of the problem was his pooping during meals. So when I saw the sign, I took him off his high chair and go to the potty, and then screaming, crying started. So it's really about how, shall we try again, or shall we leave it now? And I know you had some good points when we actually did a whole show on toileting, which is an important one at this time. So Simone, do you have any advice here?
Yeah, so I'm very much about follow the child. So if he's refusing, I wouldn't force the issue, because really, when you talk about how eating and toileting are two of the things that they have to control themselves, so that we can't make it happen for them. But what I like to do in the meantime is just keep scaffolding the skills. So I'm going to keep offering the potty every time I change the nappy, and just be very normal and relaxed about it, because if I'm anxious about it, thinking, oh no, he's about to poo, and they're just going to pick up my stress from it. I think a lot of Montessori teachers like to start young, and I think that I kind of will just wait till they feel more comfortable. So I might be a little bit more, less on, like 17 months is for me quite young, so I wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah, and Marlene, thank you for that question. I was just actually talking to a mom yesterday in a class where she had started actually very young, I think around 6 months. Her daughter was, sitting on the potty, everything was going well. And then she came to a period where she just resisted it. So she just put it away and then brought it back out a month later, and it went fine. So, like Simone says, it's really about following their lead. There are people who start a lot earlier who are successful, but I think it really depends on you, on the environment, and especially the child. There's people that do the whole elimination communication from the very beginning. It's a big commitment and involves, really being in tune and observing everything. But I think, if he's resisting, let him resist and bring it back out just kindly later on. So yes.
Great. But definitely go back to the toileting show if you're in the throes of it, because there's also a really nice story. One of our colleagues we met up with in Prague at the Montessori Congress, and she was saying that toileting is just like another activity. So it's kind of cute when they're learning to stand, fall down, and stand and fall down, but it's not so fun when they're kind of peeing on the floor and sometimes getting it in and sometimes not. But actually, when we can be as relaxed about it as when they're learning to stand up, then it often goes very smoothly. So kind of keep that in mind as well.
Yes, and
Great.
and
All right.
I will add just to that, Simone, how you said that toileting, eating, and sleeping are the three things that we can't, force. It's really about the environment that we create for them so that they are successful, and just give it the time and patience that it needs, and then the consistency. So good luck.
Awesome.
Let us know, okay?
This is a good one for you. This is from Katka, and it says, my question for the next Montessori show is about what is really hard for me at the moment: how to manage a 2-year-old having a no to everything season, defiance period, offering 2 choices does not work. Thanks.
Well, that's a good one. Unfortunately, this is like you say, a season, and it is that season of understanding that we have a will and that we can say no, and that we are very mighty and powerful, and that we're a full-fledged individual. So, it just know that it will pass. Know that this is just part of the development of the will, and that we need to very, lovingly, kindly say, oh, I hear you. Yes, you don't want to do this. And, again, choices. And for me, what's really important is that one of the choices can be, I see you're having a hard time choosing, mommy's going to choose for you. And that's just, that's just part of it. And they might get upset, but you know what? You just have to let them know, I see you're really upset. You have that compassion and such, and you just keep at it. Keep at it. It is a difficult moment in time, because it does feel like they're just, being so resistant. But remember, as I've said so many times, they're not doing it to bother you or to give you a hard time. They're just trying to figure out what is their power. So yes. What about you, Simone? What would you say?
Oh, something happened. Oh, I see. I can't. I was trying to post something, a link for someone in the chat box, but it didn't. I'll get back to you, Michelle, about that. So the defiance stage, I think, is really interesting as well, because if you ask a 2-year-old sometimes, do they want to pee? They say no. And if they want to eat now, no. Do you want to have a bath now? No. Do you want to eat chocolate? No. And so when you really, I think this is how I'm picturing it in my head, is that it's no to everything, even the good stuff. So I might even just change how I phrase things. So instead of even asking a question for that, like, really defiant time, I would even just say, oh, it's time for the potty, or it's time for us to eat. And choices at that moment if the answer is no. And then there's also that working with kind of concept that Alfie Kohn talks about, rather than doing to. And a 2-year-old really wants to start charge a little bit more than just being told what's going on. So getting the checklist. So we've done a whole episode, I think, on making a checklist for your child so that they feel involved. So that could be, if they're really getting ready to leave the house, that you could have just a short checklist of the things that they need to do it. I wouldn't have checklists for everything, but for the problem area, or working out ways like saying shoes, and then they have to work out, oh, I need to go and get my shoes now, and getting more involved in the process. So there's some extra things that it might help during that defiance period.
So are there any questions that came up in the chat? Well, hello, Stephanie. First time watching live. Wonderful to have you here. Okay. So there's Michelle is saying how should I start with Montessori, and we will give you links to the other shows that are more introductory, Montessori 101 and such would be wonderful. And then
okay, so in the show notes, I'll put the link to, we did do an introduction to Montessori show,
yes.
but actually that's also, she has started with the introduction video. So,
okay.
I mean, do you mean, Michelle, do you mean the one from the Montessori show or from the Montessori Notebook? It's so confusing. Anyway, we'll definitely post the links to both of those in the show notes.
And I've been trying to go back and actually give a proper title to the show so that you know what the topic was, and so they're easy to find on YouTube. And then there was another one about Morven saying, my 4-year-old is just starting to read and is really interested to see her trace letter with her finger when she gets stuck on a word because she started out with the sandpaper letters. I don't understand what the...
No, it's not a question. It's just a lovely comment.
Okay.
Back up, there was one from Christina Keene, which is also about packing away. And she says, my son, 1.3 years old, takes all the things and throws them out of boxes and leaves instead of playing with them. Back and telling him that we pack away when we finish playing, but it doesn't seem to help. How should I handle this? Should I leave the things where they are or keep on tidying up?
So I might look at your environment and I might just take out a lot of things, because it just sounds like there might be a lot, and that we can just reduce it considerably, and being very consistent. I mean, I remember actually during our training, a trainer was saying how there are times when you can take everything off the shelf and just have empty shelves, so that they start realizing the importance of putting things back. And then she would just introduce just one thing at a time, and you just had to put it back and then slowly put things back. So that might be, because a 3-year-old by now should have gotten, more or less the concept of the order. So maybe it's just taking some of the material out would be my, just what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that when they're throwing things, it's either too easy, too hard, or too many. So
exactly
how I would adjust.
So Simone, we have another question from Caroline. And she is concerned about her struggle is understanding or wanting to make her home to accommodate both a toddler and a baby's needs. So our whole home is a yes zone for our children, and she doesn't want to separate rooms. So how can she organize the activities so the baby doesn't get into the toddler's things and such?
Yeah. So the way that I usually would try is, if you have shelves, to have the top shelves for the things for the older child that they can reach, and the bottom shelves for things that both of them would use, or the younger child. Even if a baby's pulling up, though, sometimes they can reach the top shelves, then I'd use containers that only the toddler can open and not the baby. So you keep your eyes out for handy containers. So if you've got small parts, that kind of helps as well. And then another thing, when siblings are interfering in each other's play and they really get frustrated, is to have a place that each of them can go to play when they don't want to be disturbed. So sometimes the toddler might sit at the dining table, for example, so that the baby can't interrupt. Or I would adjust an activity because the baby wants to be involved, and so I'd simplify it so that they could do part of the activity perhaps as well. I do have seen some homes, I know she doesn't want to separate them, but sometimes you can set up a play area more on one side of the room for the baby and more on the other side from room for the toddler. And it's not saying they can't go into each other's spaces, but it might help their concentration if they're really, getting annoyed with each other a lot. They're the first things I would start with. What about you?
No, you brought up some very good point. I think, it's just different areas, and then also letting the toddler, the older child, which after reading some more is almost 3 or 3, is that they can understand also that they need to be vigilant of not leaving small objects out that could be harmful to the baby. So also giving them a responsibility about having to put away certain things. And then the idea of different levels is great, because if we have, baskets and trays, we just put them back up. And if she's confident and can get up on a stool and everything, you can even make it even more special for, some of the other things. The other thing, sometimes if it really gets problematic, it might mean that there's certain more, finite activities that are during baby's nap time and things like that. And that's kind of how we structure the day as well. Excuse me. And so Simone, Caroline had another question about just the home. She did ask about putting things back on the shelf, and I hope we answered that with our first question. But she's also saying, that she doesn't want it to be as structured as in the classroom, and doesn't want the rug, but doesn't like the constant mess. So how to kind of handle that in an apartment.
Oh, sorry, I was distracted with the chat.
Oh my goodness, Simone.
I wasn't listening to my question. Oh, okay, I'm going to be very professional now. I'm sorry about that. It was really cute because someone posted a question mark in the chat room and I got confused, but actually it was a child. So I was just writing "Welcome to the children." Okay, let me finish because I'm not very good at doing two things at a time. Okay, we can.
I mean, the question. Honestly, I think we already answered it with following their lead and to modeling how to put things back, because she doesn't want it to be as rigid and structured as in the Montessori classroom where you take out a rug and play and such, but is also having a hard time with the mess that many toys can create in an apartment. So how to handle that.
Yeah, and I also see that she wants the toys to stay in her bedroom rather than having them all over the place. So I would try, I think it's a bit unrealistic to expect that a child won't want their things. So I always like to have a little area in each room of the house so that they could, play and feel comfortable in that space. So make it very minimal so that you can put it away at the end of the day if you really don't want to look at it and that kind of thing. So I think we've covered otherwise most of it, that they're working on it. And
I will add to that. I will add to that, because I was actually just in a home last week where that was the issue, and actually the home had been overtaken by the children's toys. And so to me, it's okay to have it all in the in a playroom or in their bedroom, if that's the place, and just have it so that they can, like, maybe they have a special basket or a special tray where they can bring things out into the living room and play with them there and everything, because they want to be close to us, they want to be near us, and that's fine as long as they understand that it also goes back. So kind of instilling that. And then, I can't stress this enough, but look at your environment. Sometimes there's just too many things, and that it's okay to put some of these away temporarily and to rotate them and such. That you do not need to have, so many activities out, which is often why it ends up being such a mess, because there's this overwhelm. Oh, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this. And it just ends up being quite chaotic. So yes. Simone?
Yeah.
You there?
I'm there. I was listening and I was just waiting for the question.
Okay, then these are long descriptions and such. I've been trying to model to her cleaning up, putting things back. No. Well, I think we've covered that. Do you want to read the next question, Simone?
Sure. Okay. Caroline, let us know if we missed anything. It was a long question. Okay. Rebecca has asked, I find my nearly 3-year-old has very little interest in the Montessori work I put out for him, particularly beyond the first presentation. I try to make the activities varied and to his interests, but he just doesn't go for them. For example, we went to an art gallery with the children's cutting with scissors activity last week. He was doing lots of long and short cutting and really enjoyed it. The next day I had a cutting with scissors work available for him and he didn't touch it. Today I pointed it out to him and gave him a presentation. He did it and enjoyed it. When I asked if he'd like another cutting activity, for the most part he just plays with his cars or train, and that's fine, but I'd like your advice if there's something I can do to make other work more attractive to him.
To me, it's really, again, following their leads. You've put it out. You've seen that there was an interest. You've made it available, and he will go back to it when he feels that it is something that he needs to master, because that's really where they get this sense of repetition and such. Sometimes we might create an activity and it's just maybe a little too easy, so they're quickly kind of bored with it, and there's no challenge. They always like that little challenge, and then sometimes it's too difficult, so they tend to to be perfectionist, and I'm not going to try this just yet. So gauge that. And then, take no personal offense if it's not repeated. It's, he's going to play with his cars and then we'll come back. Maybe, you might invite him to cut some pieces to build a road for the cars, or something, if that's, something that is important. But, and then once in a while, it can be sometimes just changing one of the elements on the tray. I know, for example, for different pourings or things like that, you can change just a pitcher, and it suddenly makes it, interesting, and they want to do it again. And Simone, you probably have more tips on that because of setting up the environment every day for little ones.
Well, I think so. 3-year-olds are slightly different, obviously. I'm not sure if she's homeschooling and wants to start to introduce Montessori materials, but if they're at a Montessori school, then maybe that's why, because they're getting enough school. And so we try, once they're at a preschool, not to necessarily have Montessori work at home. And I would have, more creative things, art and craft and practical life activities and playing with your trains, because you just want to relax and chill out as well. And then there's also like work that keeps them busy. So he might have been busy cutting, but actually work that's challenging. So it is different to work that's challenging. So I guess busy all the time, he should keep looking for that thing that really takes his interest. And as you say, if his interest is in trains at the moment, then you can read books about trains, and you can go deep diving into different types of vehicles and different excavators and road building. And there's so many things that you could use that as a jumping off point to go down as well, to meet many other needs as well. That's what I would say.
So Simone,
Jacqueline,
I have a question for you from our subscribers who send one in.
Oh, yeah.
From Rocio in Mexico.
Sure.
Who has, she cannot wait to receive your book in Mexico, by the way. So this is concerning a 5-year-old. A 5-year-old who's getting very frustrated with things she cannot do, or if things are not the way she wants them to be. And so that's what they're really struggling with. And she will get very upset and throw things and such. And so they mention a certain situation, how far to let it go, because it's late. Just yesterday, she did not want to dress with warmer clothes, and it gets her mad in a second. We get to a point if we should either continue to support her, hug her, be firm and everything, and take her to school without breakfast. So our worry is that we have 2-year-old twins, and we think they are starting to copy her behavior.
Okay. So when you're struggling to leave the house, that we talked a little bit already about having the checklist and having them involved in the process, because basically anytime that she's having a big performance and she's trying to make it our problem and we're getting stressed by it, we have to realize we're actually, and particularly a 5-year-old, control back to her, because at the moment it's getting a very good result. how much time are you allowing in the morning to get through that whole process, because that also could be putting extra pressure on the child. But really, otherwise, just you can say, oh, what's on the checklist? So you sit down, you make the checklist with them, and then you refer back to the checklist. What does it say we need to do first and second? And it's the checklist that's managing it, rather than you having to nag them to do those kind of things. Also, because the 2-year-olds are watching, I'd be kind and clear and what's okay and what's not okay, because it sounds like she's kind of a lot by throwing things around, and like, I'm not going to let you throw this, or like, I'm not sure exactly.
Yes, no, it's true. It's to be, to be firm. I mean, I see you're having a really hard time, and you're not wanting to get dressed, and it's time to go to school. So would you like me to help you put on your clothes, or would you like to put them on yourself? I mean, just loving, kind, but firm, because it's true, the twins are watching, and sometimes that power play is just behavior of wanting attention and just wanting a little extra connection. So being aware, maybe what time of days this happen, where the moods are, if there's hunger involved, or tired, and all of that. And when Simone says checklist, she's referring to we did a whole episode on routines, where we talked about how to set up a routine chart that is just wonderful, especially for a 5-year-old, and especially if, for example, getting out the door on time in the morning is an issue. I would definitely go back and listen to that episode, because it will help you kind of create a personalized game plan for her that she can be in charge of, and that is very powerful for them.
Yeah, I'll definitely put the link in the show notes so you can find that one easily. And also, just to let you know that I did run a How to Talk So Kids Will Listen workshop with one parent, and her child was 5, and they were having really hard time in the morning, and we talked through a very similar thing that we have now, just trying to give the problem back to her. You're supporting them through it, but you're not making it your problem. And she said it just changed overnight. Her daughter's not a morning person, so they decided to get most of their things done in the evening, like choosing what clothes they were going to wear, and so it was easier for her. So again, it's working with them rather than and taking on all the responsibility for them. It's going to be good, I promise. Jacqueline has asked me, this is in the chat, I was wondering if there are any resources from Maria Montessori on teaching children about religion. I have read that she's Catholic, as am I. And I don't know anything about it, but do you know anything about the catechesis kind of classes?
Yes, Catechism of the Good Shepherd, which is actually a Montessori training to teach kind of the rituals around Catholicism. And I would, I don't personally know anything about it, but if you go online and go to Nicole Kavanaugh, the Kavanaugh Report is a wonderful blog. She's the mom of 3 little ones, and she shares kind of her journey. She is actually trained in Catechism of the Good Shepherd, and would probably be the person to ask those questions. So whether you belong to a group called Montessori 101 on Facebook, she's one of the admins there. So I would just tag her and ask her, or otherwise contact her through her blog, the Kavanaugh Report.
Cool. And Asnate says, so cool to hear that also Montessori kids just want to chillax sometimes. Yes, let them be kids.
Of course.
And then, I know who 4N is. That's Anna. She said, Ollie's saying hi. And he's in Barcelona. He's just moved, one of our Amsterdam families. That's very sweet. Caroline has got another question. She says, what about this? When I try putting things away, she keeps telling me she needs all of the things. No, you can't put the blocks away. That's my tower. This has to stay.
Yeah, that's a hard one. And I don't know how you deal with that, Simone, but sometimes I've noticed in some classroom where they let children kind of keep their workout with, maybe because it's still evolving. So I think it's important to, if she is constructing something and she's not quite done, could there be a place in the home where it's okay to leave, one thing out? That would be, again, to me, it's about, finding solutions with your child, because they do kind of get possessive of what they're building and constructing and such. So it is important.
Yeah, we actually even
Right.
had, when the kids were smaller, an IKEA tabletop on wheels. And so when they built something out of Lego and wanted to keep it, we could slide it across to the side and keep it out of the way. And the other thing is that sometimes you want to be relaxed and just maybe say, let's just make sure that by the time it's lunchtime, we're going to pack away. Another thing you can do is you can take a photo, and then once they've seen on your digital, on your phone that there's a photo of it, then they're like happy to pack it away. So there's a memory of it. So maybe those ideas will help too, Caroline. And Jacqueline says, thank you. That was about the resources for the Catholicism.
Okay.
Do you know what age they start with, the catechism?
I don't. I would assume kind of primary, but it could be toddlers too. And I've seen some of the material, and it's just beautiful. I mean, it is, everything that you would find on an altar in a church, but in miniature, and they just do a lot of that themselves. It's really beautiful. So we have
one from Lena that we missed. Can I read that one to you?
Sure.
It says, I have a 3.5-year-old and she has a lot of trouble identifying her emotions. She started crying, and when I asked her what was wrong, she couldn't tell me. We have a book on feelings, and I asked her if she was feeling sad, mad, and she finally told me she was sad, but she said she didn't want to tell me why. At her school, her teacher told me she started crying randomly, which isn't like her, and again, wouldn't say why. Any suggestions for all your advice?
That's a tough one, just because I don't know as if they know why, which is often the situation, because they're just feeling a big emotion and they can't really, pinpoint it. And that gets even more frustrating when you're asking, but why are you sad? What's wrong? When they don't know what's wrong. So to me, again, it's that, just, oh, I see you're really upset, and I'm here. If you need a hug, I can hug you. And sometimes we just feel upset, and it's good to just let it out. So let it out, and then maybe later on, when things have calmed down, you can say, oh, I remember you were crying earlier. Do you know why you were crying? What was upsetting you? So that it's not in the moment. I mean, it's funny, because I think we always have to remember, like, what would make us feel good. Sometimes I can be pretty moody, and I don't always know what sets it off. And if, my husband says, oh, what's wrong? And I said, I don't know, but what's wrong? What's wrong? You get upset. You don't know what's going on. You just need to be with that emotion. And so it's about just letting children be with their emotions sometimes, and just acknowledging that you see that they're upset, and that sometimes, doesn't crying make you feel good, and that's it, and let them have a good cry. It's okay. We don't have to fix it all and understand it all.
Jeanne-Marie, you have a fan on in the chat room. Did you see?
Oh, ho, ho. I have my husband online. I made it safe.
Yeah, that's the best compliment, is actually when your husband turns up to watch your shows.
Yes, that's nice. So I have a question for you, Simone, from one of our subscribers. Very thankful for us for doing these shows. And she loves listening to us both and has learned a lot. But she is wondering, actually a 16-month-old, how to stay sane when the work you put out for your child is just thrown with abandon. And she is talking about her 16-month-old is very interested in puzzles, but she gets frustrated that it gets just thrown out and not well taken care of. So she's afraid of the clutter and wants to know how to deal with that.
I think that a lot of 16-month-olds are still exploring by taking things out a lot. So if there's a puzzle on the shelf, I find a lot of my 16-month-olds take all the pieces out and put them on the floor. And then I'll put them back and they'll try it again. And then I'll put them back and they're trying it again. And then around then put all the pieces back in overnight, as if one day they were throwing it and the next they're able to master it. So you could just put it away if the pieces are too messy, because again, like if they're throwing it, sometimes it's too difficult. Or you just let them do a lot of exploration through touching and feeling around things, I would say, and rotate the toys a bit so that they're not getting bored with them, and having age-appropriate activities out. Also, like a variety, so that a 16-month-old needs to move a lot and do things with heavy objects. So having like moving heavy furniture or having heavy baskets for them to move. So when you're seeing like this physical, they need to move in a more appropriate way, perhaps. So then obstacle courses or a tunnel, climbing frames and things like this could be good.
And also I will add, I'm also sensing that maybe the puzzles, it's the loose parts that get to be, bothersome and such. So puzzles are wonderful to use the board as kind of a tray and have a basket for all the pieces, so that when we put the puzzle away, it doesn't have to be complete and finished, but the pieces can just be in its own little container, and that makes it a lot easier for them to put things away, so that, especially if it's a puzzle that they might be having a little bit of a harder time with it, they can just put all the pieces in the basket and then it's put away nicely.
A really nice pegboard in my classroom that's got these little pegs that they put into the holes, and there's quite a lot in there because it's a nice activity that they will repeat and repeat and repeat. But for the young children, they see this big bowl of pegs and they just want to throw them. But if I hold the box and I say, oh, you want to look at the box here, and I give them one peg at a time, then by isolating just one of them, then they actually are more interested in putting it into the pegboard, where when they see it, or they just need to touch and feel it and throw it and see what happens and what sound it is. So quite normal and just another experience.
So
Jacqueline
do we have time for more questions? Because we're just chatting away and it's already been an hour.
What we'll do is we'll quickly answer the one in the chat room, and I think we have one more in the...
Two more.
As well, Anna's. Two more. So we'll do two more questions. I'm going to just write here, closing questions now. So fun. Jacqueline asks in the chat, my 20-month-old does not want to feed herself or explore with food. I am unable to model sitting at the table with her as I'm constantly nursing the baby. Do you have any suggestions?
Simone, suggestions?
Sorry. I think that I would go back, if they're really having troubles, I'm questioning, you're in charge of it. So the responsibility for the adult is to provide healthy meals, when they're going to eat and where they're going to eat. And so maybe just cut out snacks for now and have a really nice place low down where the child can sit, or have more family meals as well, because if they're not sitting at their table, they're maybe not learning that it's an experience where they sit with somebody else. Because if you're feeding the baby, they're not learning that it's also a social experience. So I'd really try, you can still nurse a baby and sit at the dining table at the same time and make it a family meal. Or I would try and have your family meals maybe when the baby's sleeping. So I know it might be a bit unpredictable at the moment, but I would just keep bringing the food back to the table and say, oh, we sit down to eat, and these kind of things. So they're some of my first suggestions that come to mind.
Yes, and that was going to be mine as well. I mean, if there's any possibility that you can nurse close to her, so whether you can, be close to the dining room table so that you can be close to her. And I know that might get kind of problematic because, we, especially if she's wanting attention and making a mess and everything. So I would just, not force it. I mean, just like we said earlier, food is one of those where they do want to have control. And so it's really about just providing healthy food and trying to time it where you can sit down with her so you can model it. or maybe get help from somebody else who is there, who can do that as well, especially if you're nursing. But don't, children will not let themselves starve. They as long as you always are providing good, healthy food, they will eventually eat it. And sometimes there's even days when they're not going to eat, but they will eat well the next day. So, and we actually did an episode on eating, but it was just this understanding that children, their nutritional plate is actually on a 7-day. It's on a whole week. It's not that whole day. So there's one day where they might not eat much, and the next day they will. So it's more about looking at the long range. Is she getting enough food? Is she growing and healthy and such? And just know that it's also probably her way of saying, hey, pay attention to me. Why are you nursing a baby and all of that? So it's power. It's fine. Don't let it get to you. Right, Simone? Would you agree? Yeah, okay.
Definitely.
So let's do the last two questions that came in from our subscribers. And one of them is about safety. There's her question is about freedom and safety. My toddler approaches the age of 3 and we're moving to a big city. My current struggle is how to give him freedom and keep him safe. Our new flat has a small balcony, and it would be lovely if my son could use it freely for gardening, water, etc. But he could also climb over, stepping over furniture and things. So it's just that wanting to keep it safe on a balcony. What would be your suggestion, Simone?
I think that I would have to say I would only let them go outside supervised in that situation. My parents in Australia have an apartment, and we stay with them for a few weeks every couple of years when we go back. And when we have the young nieces and nephews over, just one of us has to go out onto the balcony to be with them. It's just, it's too risky. Child safe. I'm not sure. Do you have any suggestions, Jeanne-Marie?
Yes, no, I would actually do something like that. And if you want to leave, like the window open or something, have some sort of mechanism that is going to let you know that they're out on the balcony, whether it's a little bell that rings when they open the door or something, so that you are aware, because it's true, you want them to have that independence. And I think it's also very, very important. And a 3-year-old is, starting to reason, so you can very well explain about the dangers and such, and make sure that there is no furniture that they can step up and climb over and such. So it would be, making sure that you have some way of always knowing when they go out on the balcony, and also giving them a really, good understanding of, why we need to be careful, that I love you and I want you to be safe. And, it scares me. And so we need to be safe, and we don't get up and so on. And, he will eventually get it. And I am also a firm believer that they do know, they do have an innate understanding of danger, that they're not, necessarily going to do these crazy things that we tend to imagine and go down that path. So yes. And then there's one more. Do you want to read the last one, or is there? Oh no, there's, yes, 2 more.
I mean, I guess, and even things like crossing.
Excuse me, I didn't hear that.
So I think we actually have answered those. They were from the chat.
Excuse me, I didn't hear that.
Those 2 questions, because they were in the chat box. I just added them into the Google Doc. So we've answered those last 2 questions.
Perfect. So we've done another Montessori shop.
Just going back to the safety thing, you know,
Yes.
if you okay.
Simone, you're
Sorry, everyone,
not
we're
here.
losing a bit of connection here at the end.
Yes.
Jeanne-Marie has a great program that's about to start. So Jeanne-Marie, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. Thanks for the reminder. I am launching a membership program, which I'm very, very excited about. It's called Montessori Parenting Membership Community. And I will be sending out information and posting about it next week. And I'm opening the doors up to just a few kind of as a founding member. So I'm keeping the price really low of $27 a month to really have a very, small group where I will be providing some tutorials on a monthly basis and also doing live Q&A and inviting special guests. I'm hoping Simone will come in and be one of our guests. And so this will be a very close-knit membership community for parents who are interested in really diving deep into incorporating Montessori principles at home and also positive discipline. So it is called the Montessori Parenting Membership Community. I will share the link so that Simone can share it, and also I will be doing some Facebook post about it and my email. So if you are subscribed to my list, you will get all that information as well.
Yeah, and like Jeanne-Marie mentioned, this last couple of weeks, my book, The Montessori Toddler, has been printed and sent out to the Kickstarter backers, which is very exciting. And I did order some extra copies, which will be shipped in February. So if you want to get one of those, you can pre-order that from the Montessori Notebook website. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight for the Montessori show. It was super fun to help answer all your questions about what you were struggling with. And next month, we want to flip it around and talk about our Montessori success stories. So we want you to be sending in how Montessori has helped you at home, so that we can encourage each other and give each other ideas where you can be using Montessori successfully as well.
Yes, thank you.
So Jeanne-Marie, I'm looking forward to it. And good luck with your workshop later today.
Thank you. Yes, I will be speaking to a group of about 60 parents here in a beautiful Montessori school in the Los Angeles area. Looking forward to it.
If anyone's in the area, can they join?
I think so, yes. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly the address, but you can message me and I will tell you.
Okay, so yeah, on Facebook, message Jeanne-Marie if you're in the Los Angeles area and you want to get to a workshop tonight. And there's a few people saying thank you in the chat. You are most welcome. It is always our absolute pleasure. We love meeting up with you once a month. And Jeanne-Marie, do you have the date for the next one?
So what did we say? We said the 23rd of February.
Okay, so we'll see you all on the 23rd of February.
Yes. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.